The Sopwith pup entered Australian service in 1916 with pilots of the Australian Flying Corps on the Western Front. Powered by an 80-horsepower Lerone rotary engine, it hit around 111 miles per hour and was praised for its exceptional maneuverability, despite having half the engine power of many German opponents. Notable Australian pilots, including Charles Kingsford Smith, Hudson Fysh, and Patrick Gordon Taylor, flew the type in combat. After the war, 11 examples arrived in Australia as part of the Imperial Gift and served at Point Cook from 1921 to 1925. Royal Aircraft Factory SI-5A, Australia's No. 2 Squadron AFC, switched to the SE-5A in late 1917, replacing its outclassed DH-5S. Powered by a 200-horsepower Hispano-Suiza engine, it reached around 138 miles per hour and was considered one of the finest fighters of the war, stable, strong, and an excellent gun platform. The squadron claimed roughly 170 enemy aircraft, flying this type through to the armistice. Sopwith Camel. No. 4 Squadron AFC received the Camel in late 1917. It was history's highest-scoring Allied fighter of the Great War, capable of around 115 miles per hour with unmatched agility in turning combat. It was also genuinely dangerous to fly. Its powerful rotary engine and compact design punished inexperienced pilots. In capable Australian hands, it outturned virtually any opponent and accounted for more aerial victories than any other Allied fighter. Bristol FF-2B Fighter. The Bristol fighter was a two-seat reconnaissance and combat aircraft that defied conventional thinking. Powered by a 275-horsepower Rolls-Royce Falcon, it reached around 123 miles per hour. Australian crews learned to fly it aggressively, like a fighter, not an observation plane, and it proved surprisingly capable against single-seat opposition, becoming one of the war's most effective two-seat designs. Sopwith Snipe. The Snipe arrived with No. 4 Squadron in October 1918 as a Camel replacement. Its 230-horsepower Bentley rotary gave it around 121 miles per hour, with better handling than its predecessor. Australian pilots flew it in some of the war's final fierce air battles, though the armistice came before it could fully replace the Camel in AFC service. Bristol Bulldog, a single-seat biplane interceptor of the early 1930s, powered by a 440-horsepower Bristol Jupiter radial, producing 175 miles per hour. Capable for its time, but monoplane designs were already making biplanes obsolete. Gloster Gauntlet served briefly with RAAF units in Egypt in 1940. Its Bristol Mercury engine pushed it to 230 miles per hour, fast for a biplane. But by then, monoplanes had completely overtaken fabric-covered fighters in performance. Hawker Demon, a two-seat fighter biplane operating from the late 1930s into the early war years. 64 examples served, powered by a 525-horsepower Rolls-Royce Kestrel, producing 180 miles per hour, a transitional design that was quickly overshadowed by modern monoplane fighters. Gloster Gladiator, the RAAF's last biplane fighter to see operational service, flying over North Africa in 1940. Its 840-horsepower Bristol Mercury gave it 250 miles per hour, respectable, but its biplane configuration placed it at a decisive disadvantage against modern opposition. Its RAAF service marked the definitive end of the biplane era. Hawker Hurricane. The Hurricane served primarily in Middle East theaters, powered by a Rolls-Royce Merlin delivering around 340 miles per hour. It was rugged, reliable, and easy to maintain in desert conditions, qualities that proved as valuable as raw speed. Its 8-gun armament was particularly effective against enemy bombers, and its robust airframe could absorb battle damage and still fly home from rough forward strips. Supermarine Spitfire. The most celebrated fighter Australia ever operated. Nearly 930 examples flew with Australian squadrons from 1941 onward. Over Darwin, across Europe, with numbers, 451, 452, 453, and 457 squadrons, and throughout the Mediterranean. Early variants hit around 360 miles per hour, with continuous development keeping it competitive throughout the war. Its elliptical wing, exceptional climb rate, and superb handling made it one of history's greatest fighter designs. Bolton Pole Defiant. Number 456 Squadron RAAF flew the Defiant in the UK as a night fighter. Its 1,030 horsepower Merlin gave it 300 miles per hour, and all armament was concentrated in a powered dorsal turret. No forward-firing guns at all. That configuration was a disaster in daylight combat, but worked in the night fighter role, where radar-equipped crews could attack from below without needing a forward gun. Brewster F-2, a Buffalo one of the darkest episodes in RAAF history. Numbers 21 and 453 squadrons flew the Buffalo over Malaya and Singapore in late 1941 and early 1942. Its 1,200 horsepower Wright Cyclone gave it 320 miles per hour, but the Japanese Zero outclassed it comprehensively in climb, speed, and maneuverability at altitude. Australian pilots faced overwhelming opposition in an aircraft that was never designed for what it was being asked to do. Curtiss P-40 Warhawk hundreds served with the RAAF from 1941 across the Middle East and Pacific. The P-40's Allison V1710 engine delivered around 360 miles per hour, and its 6.50 caliber machine guns and rugged airframe made it an outstanding ground attack aircraft. It couldn't match Japanese or German fighters in turning combat at altitude, but in the strike role it was effective, available and reliable, exactly what Australian squadrons needed. Bell P-39, Airacobra 22 examples were loaned to the RAAF by American forces for Pacific operations. The P-39's unconventional layout, engine behind the pilot, 37mm cannon through the propeller hub, made it a devastating low-altitude weapons platform. Though it struggled at height, it found genuine success at low altitude where its heavy nose armament hit hard against ground targets and shipping. Republic P-43. Lancer 8 examples served exclusively in photographic reconnaissance, not combat. Their 1,200 horsepower Pratt and Whitney engines delivered around 360 miles per hour, and the high-altitude performance suited aerial intelligence missions over defended Pacific territory. Small numbers, but a meaningful contribution to operational planning. Bristol Beaufighter. Over 500 were assembled in Australia and employed as one of the Pacific War's most feared strike aircraft. Twin Bristol Hercules radials pushed it to around 320 miles per hour, and it carried 4 20mm cannons, 6 machine guns, rockets, and bombs. Australian crews used it to devastating effect against Japanese shipping and ground targets. It could absorb serious battle damage and still deliver its weapons, making it the RAAF's premier Pacific strike platform. De Havilland Mosquito. Over 280 served with the RAAF from 1943 in night fighter, bombing, and reconnaissance roles. Built largely from wood, twin Rolls-Royce Merlins pushed it to around 415 miles per hour, fast enough to outrun most threats without needing defensive guns. Its speed, range, and versatility made it one of the war's most adaptable aircraft, and its wooden construction avoided competition for strategic metal resources. North American P-51 Mustang operated extensively as a long-range fighter, with licensed versions built domestically by Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation. Packard-built Merlin engines gave it around 440 miles per hour and exceptional range that transformed escort operations. Australian squadrons used it for escort, ground attack, and air superiority missions across the Pacific. Its post-war RAAF service continued until 1960, testament to how good the design genuinely was. See Boomerang, CA, 12 Australia's only domestically designed and built fighter of the war, when Japanese advances threatened the continent in early 1942 and imported fighters were uncertain, designer Fred David created the Boomerang from concept to first flight in roughly 3 months, an extraordinary achievement. It used components from the existing CAC Wirraway trainer combined with a 1,200 horsepower Pratt and Whitney twin Wasp engine, reaching around 305 miles per hour. Armed with 220mm cannons and 4.303 machine guns, around 250 were built and served in New Guinea and other Pacific areas. It couldn't match contemporary Japanese or American fighters at high altitude, but at low level it was tough, maneuverable, and heavily armed. Its most recognized role was marking targets with smoke for attacking corsairs, earning the nickname Smoky Joe. It never scored an air-to-air kill, but it proved that Australia could design and build a fighter under genuine wartime pressure. Gloster Meteor, No. 77 Squadron brought the Meteor to Korea in 1951, Britain's first operational jet fighter, and Australia's introduction to jet combat. Twin Rolls-Royce Derwent turbojets delivered around 600 miles per hour, but swept-wing MiG-15S proved faster and better at altitude. Australians shifted the Meteor to ground attack, where its robust construction and heavy armament suited low-level operations. The Korean experience gave the RAAF hard-won lessons in jet-age air combat. De Havilland Vampire. The Vampire entered RAAF service in the late 1940s. Distinctive twin-boom design, single Goblin turbojet, around 540 miles per hour. It never saw combat with Australian forces, but it gave pilots their first real experience with jet handling characteristics and turbine engine operations. A valuable bridge between piston and jet aviation. Fairey Firefly. Around 108 served with the Royal Australian Navy from 1946, including combat during the Korean War, flying from HMAS Sydney. Its Rolls-Royce Griffin engine delivered around 320 miles per hour. The Firefly handled ground attack, anti-submarine, and reconnaissance missions, a true multi-role naval aircraft before that term was common. Hawker Sea Fury. The pinnacle of piston engine fighter design. The RAN flew it from the late 1940s and in Korean War combat, where Australian naval pilots, remarkably, successfully engaged jet-powered opponents. Its 2,480 horsepower Bristol Centaurus radial produced around 460 miles per hour, and in skilled hands that was enough to compete with early jets under the right conditions. The Sea Fury was piston aviation's final masterpiece. English Electric Canberra 55 entered RAAF service from 1951 as Australia's first jet bomber. Twin Rolls-Royce Avons gave it around 470 miles per hour. It served until 1982 in bombing, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare roles, including thousands of combat sorties during the Vietnam War. 3 decades of continuous service is a remarkable record. De Havilland Sea Venom, the RAN's first carrier-based jet night fighter, operating from HMAS, Melbourne through the 1950s and early 1960s. A single Ghost turbojet gave it around 560 miles per hour. It never saw combat with Australian forces, but established procedures for radar-equipped jet carrier operations that shaped future naval aviation. CACCA-27 Sabre. Australia took the American F-86 Sabre airframe and installed a more powerful Rolls-Royce Avon turbojet, producing 112 examples domestically from 1954. The result was a fighter superior to the standard American version, better climb, better acceleration, transonic in level flight, and supersonic in dives. It served as the RAAF's primary fighter through the 1950s and 1960s, including combat deployment to Malaya during the emergency. Douglas A-4 Skyhawk. The RAN flew the Skyhawk from HMAS Melbourne as a compact carrier-based attack aircraft. A single Wright J65 turbojet gave it around 670 miles per hour. small enough to maximize deck space, capable enough to carry a serious weapons load. The Skyhawk proved that size and effectiveness don't have to trade off against each other. Dassault Mirage. 3 Australia's first supersonic fighter entered service in 1963, with 116 built domestically under license. Powered by a SNE-CMA ATAR turbojet with optional rocket booster, it exceeded Mach 2 and served as the RAAF's backbone for over 2 decades. Excellent at high altitude and in a zoom climb, though its delta wing had limitations in sustained turning combat. It served until replaced by the F/A 18 Hornet in 1988. McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II. The F-4E operated with the RAAF between 1970 and 1973, bridging a capability gap during a transitional period. Details of this arrangement remain limited in available records. The Phantom was capable of around Mach 2.2 and was one of the era's most powerful and capable combat aircraft. General Dynamics F-111. 43 entered service from 1973 and served until 2010, one of the most capable aircraft Australia ever operated. Variable sweep wings, twin afterburning turbofans, and Mach 2 plus performance combined with terrain-following radar for high-speed, low-level strike missions. Its long range suited Australia's vast operational areas, and its ability to deliver precision-guided munitions kept it relevant for nearly 4 decades, despite being a 1960s design. McDonnell Douglas F/A 18 Hornet Australia's primary combat aircraft for over 30 years. Much of the fleet was assembled domestically. Twin General Electric F404 turbofans gave it around Mach 1.8, and it proved genuinely versatile across air defense, ground attack, maritime strike, and reconnaissance missions. It flew combat operations in the Middle East and was continuously upgraded to remain effective. The last examples retired in 2021, a well-earned end to a long career. Boeing F/A-18F Super Hornet, a larger, more powerful evolution of the Hornet, with General Electric F414 engines and greater range and payload. The RAAF selected the 2-seat F variant for strike and air superiority roles. Growler electronic warfare variants add a specialized jamming capability. The Super Hornet continues in active RAAF service alongside the F-35, forming the backbone of Australia's current combat air power. Lockheed Martin FF-35 A Lightning II, the most technologically advanced aircraft Australia has ever operated. The conventional takeoff F-35A variant entered service in the late 2010s. Its top speed of around Mach 1.6 is lower than previous generations, but raw speed is no longer the point. Stealth characteristics, sensor fusion, advanced avionics, and integrated data links give the F-35 awareness and survivability in contested airspace that no previous Australian aircraft could match. It simultaneously performs air superiority, ground attack, and intelligence gathering missions.